The horseshoe. Left wing, right wing. Libertarian, authoritarian. This is the far left, this is the far right. The ends are closer together than the core, because the further you progress to the extremes, the less the ideology itself actually matters. It simply becomes a means towards gaining power. A lot of people seem to believe that the optimal way for a society to operate is to fully focus either to the right or to the left, and for the other side to simply adapt to their ways. This is incredibly narrow-minded and ignorant of who we are as a species. I will get to that. This video is focused upon the left wing because that is the side closest to me. I feel the majority of left-wingers have gradually surrendered the voice and the reins of the left to the genuinely crazy, self-serving and dangerous among us. Things have gone too far and it's now time to take it back. So I released a Nick Fuentes video several weeks back now, and considering my channel was completely dead at the time, it did pretty well. It doubled my subs and got about, I think it was 18,000 views in the first week. I then, maybe 2 weeks later, released a second video focusing upon Islamic immigration, and that got 100 views. In other words, it got throttled to shit. One of the commenters, I remember, even said replies were being hidden in some way, like you couldn't see certain replies. I don't know exactly what was going on, but something was going on. I'll say that much. Now, granted, I may have used some strongly coded language in that video, so I'm not entirely surprised that happened. I was kind of expecting it as well. It's still pretty ridiculous, though, considering how nuanced the message is. The link is in the description to that video, so you can make your own mind up there. I'll say one thing, though. Oh man, am I glad I launched that video then and not now. Because had I launched it upon these new Australian hate speech laws going into effect, I could have literally been facing jail time. As of the time of me recording this video now, they are being stalled and adjusted by multiple little inconsistencies, but by the time this launches, they may have actually gone through. Even if they have been cancelled though completely, I think we can still safely assume it won't be due to a sudden reframing of moral character on part of the bill's authors, so this video's message will stand regardless. I'm definitely not taking it down because I made effort to deliver a nuanced and practical view which I stand by, because it's a perfectly sensible view. I would also like to offer my sincere thanks to the Australian Labor Party for quite blatantly proving that video's point. You actually went above and beyond there, guys, so I appreciate that. So the core of this video is to simply state the left has lost its way to the indulgence, and it's time for the thinkers of the left to bring it back. I'll put it this way. The left ain't exactly projecting aura right now. If you were to write a comic with a token cliche bad guy and his henchmen and include all the cliche behaviors, you could match pretty much all of it to what we find on the left in open, boastful display. Starting from the mindless lackey right up to they're not exactly masterminds, but we'll say the top guys anyway. I think the oligarchs like Soros and that would probably be the masterminds there. Now, I'm not saying you will not find the same thing on the right. Of course you do. There's this YouTuber, Damien Walter, I think it is, and he made this video tying the major right-wing figureheads all to Batman villains, and I actually quite liked that one. It wasn't, like, he shoehorned a fair bit, and I don't agree with everything, but there were a couple of them he actually nailed, I think. He's left, but like old school Gen X anarchist left. And I've got a bit of a soft spot for those guys. They're way further left than me, but they do all the best art. That's where all the best art comes from. That we're talking things like Sex Pistols, Joy Division, but like Banksy, Alan Moore. So things like Watchmen, Judge Dredd, pre-woke capitalist 40k, all the art that was made to hit and hurt. That has always been the primary muse for my own work, and it comes all from those guys. Anyway, a lot of people really don't like hearing views they disagree with, but to me it's all about delivery. It's critically important to explore good creative takes from all places, because it really does make you check yourself. I will watch this guy as much as I will watch Nick Fuentes way over on the other side of the horseshoe. I'll disagree with both pretty often, but I'll like them both all the same. This is why the new Australian hate speech laws are so dicklessly abhorrent, because under those laws, depending on who's in power, one of those guys has got to go. That is unacceptable. Checking yourself is exactly what the left has not been doing, and the results are becoming evident to all. The echo chambers have been in full effect for decades now, just reaffirming and amplifying the self-aggrandizement and unaccountability to the point of caricature. Finally, however, the silent majority of sensible left are coming to see it for what it actually is. I've been wary for about a decade, but I think the first exposure point for the majority would have been probably Charlie Kirk. At least it was the most visceral, and not so much for the event itself, but the response. People just saw that and realized, oh shit, these guys are actually legitimately crazy to a dangerous level, and a bunch are now saying they are done with the left. Well, I'm here to say, no, you're not. You are not done with the left. What's happened is that you are here, and you have just noticed that the left wing's vocal minority and the power holders are all here. People's values do not change just like that, not that easily. You can change parties, you can wave different flags, but your values are founded within your very synapses. They're built up over decades of repeated reinforcement. You need to actively build alternative pathways through repetition in order to establish those contextual frameworks as the new default. Only then will the previous begin to atrophy. So you didn't just suddenly become right-wing. You just changed your t-shirt for now. But here's the thing. The whole idea of left and right is bullshit anyway. It is a modern-day convention that I feel has taken prevalence through the lack of a uniting cause. There's a whole history of the left and right concepts founding within the French Revolution. I remember some Swedish guy making a video on it once, but I think you need to actually ignore all that and instead look into prehistory to see what's actually going on. Not history. Prehistory. Before we had written language, so therefore before we were able to really complexify and project our theories and narratives. Everything through history is basically a LARP. It's a festival of performance artistry where every disparate group are all trying out some narrative or other and forcing it upon the rest in order to prove themselves right. Now yes, there is science, obviously, but in terms of the cultural context, little in history is a reliable indicator of who we actually are. It is a fantasy land. A projection of what we hope is the right path, and most of it is written by the winners. But let's take us back to Raw, to the time before we were comfortable enough to spin out these more complex doctrines. I'm talking before marriage. Way before the nuclear family, before statehood, way before religion. It is before wealth, before ownership. I'm talking before the very concept of exclusivity itself. Because personal wealth, ownership, and ambition worked directly against the interests of the tribe. And that's what it was. The tribe. That's who we were. That's everything of who we were. And I'm talking for like 95% of the 300,000 years we spent as this species of Homo sapiens, and 99.75% of the millions of years we spent before that as something very similar. It is there, in that period, where human psychology evolved, where our social instincts were selected, where our needs, values, and stress responses were calibrated. You want to know why you're feeling empty in life, or why some sinful need or vice keeps creeping up on you? Look there. It all lies somewhere in there. How we lived then and our values and practices then are basically the opposite of how we do things now. Today we pretty much do everything wrong on every level. The period of history is a pixel on that scale, one where everyone's pushing their own narrative and none of us can decide on a damn thing. This world now is a LARP. Everything is conjecture, and no one has a clue about what the fuck is actually going on. But there is one thing that is actually really fucking simple. We evolved for the tribe. Everything was done for the security and the promotion of the tribe. The more you direct yourself towards that premise, the more pure and physiologically rewarding your actions will likely be. It just makes sense because that's how we evolved. Now the semantics will naturally differ and extrapolate the more your brain kicks in and tries to intellectualize things, but do not let that cloud this incredibly simple premise. You do not need a Bible for this. You do not need to be taught this. This cause lies deeper than even language itself. So now let's take these modern concepts of left and right and apply them to the tribe. How I personally label it is abstract thinkers and logic thinkers. Ants evolved as drones to swarm in numbers as a single-minded collective. We, however, evolved an individualized level of contextual and abstract thought, and we retain that evolution because in the context of the tribe it actually works really fucking well. The logic-based thinkers ensured that we have gathered enough food for the winter. Abstract thinkers looked to those distant mountains and said, more fertile lands lay over there. The abstract thinkers saw the way a branch bent and sprung back and they prototyped a bow. The logical thinkers tried different woods and saps and refined that design. In the enclosed, locked environment of the tribe, that divergence of personality play in perfect complement with each other, precisely how we evolved. It is through that duality, through that cooperation, that we have reached the levels we have now. We wouldn't have gotten to the moon without that intertwinement. The right are not our enemy. They are our partners, because that is the way we evolved. Through the development of wealth and personal ambition, we've lost that original cause. We've scrambled around trying countless alternatives instead. Nationalism, ideology, religion, none of it has worked. There is a huge push, obviously, at the moment to embrace religion right now, and multiple different types of religion. You'll hear ad nauseum that the chaos in societies and morals is due to the loss of those values. Now, could that unifying cause be God? If you like, sure, but good luck defining that for everyone else. Could it be religion? Been there, tried that, didn't work. How many religions and ideologies have we tried now? Not a single one of them has come even close to serving the needs of even a majority of humanity. They can't even last 2,000 years without completely splitting up, collapsing, reinterpreting themselves over and over. It happens again and again across time, geography, and culture. No two individuals of a single family can even agree completely on even one of those doctrines, and you're telling me that's a uniting cause? Evidently not. But the true cause, the tribe, is gone, and we do need a replacement. The far left have a cause, and they rally wholeheartedly around that, just as they did for the cause of last week and will do again for a different cause next week and the week after that. They are all in on their unifying causes and thrust all emotion and self-indulgence there. Another word I would say is masturbation. The sensible left, whose numbers are dramatically about to increase over the coming years, I'd say, especially if I can help it, we use our emotions as tools. We do not let them drive. I was going to touch on the far left's ultimate unifying cause of the trans debate, but apparently that's in the past now. Just like the critical, all-encompassing global warming cause that seems to no longer be so important. So instead I'll just focus on the current most popular, which funnily enough seems to itself be beginning its own slide into obscurity, and that is pro-Palestine. Yes, this cause allows you to dress up in the keffiyeh and act like a freedom fighter without actually taking any risk. It allows you to deliver a slogan full force with all of your emotions and to get yourself that dopamine hit without actually having to think. You don't need to make any effort and consider the actual pillars and causes. You don't need to consider the most effective way to actually protect and enable the Palestinian people. You just want to yell, be enraged, you just want to indulge, you're too busy playing the hero because that's really what it's all about. It's about the LARP. Maintaining appearance is the priority. The cause of the week is just the wrapping paper. That woman in Minneapolis was killed after directly messing with the federal police, and people from her own group who openly encourage messing with militarized federal police were reluctant to cry about it due to the world not needing white tears. So their own natural emotions are now being actively checked by their ideology in order to maintain appearance. That is how fucking broken these people have become, and we on the left are letting them speak for us? They live in a 5-year-old's world of the good guy and the bad guy, with nothing in between. It's like if guys like Hamas are Palestinians, if the drug and human traffickers or Somali fraudsters are also immigrants who they support, well, that just means they're the good guy. No, it doesn't. That's what nuance is. Here's the reality. You do not care about helping innocent people. You do not care about the oppressed. Don't play that shit anymore. We don't believe you. What you are mindless puppets for the liberal elite. You know, those billionaires you hate so much. The ones who write all your headlines in The Guardian and who design and print all your placards and signs. Yeah, they too know exactly who you are. Useful, mindless, indulgent dopamine junkies. All they need to do is give you a little fix, a little push, and you will serve their profits with everything you are. We've seen exactly who you are with Venezuela, and now again even more blatantly with the uprisings in Iran. I have been following the situation in Iran for 20 years. We've got the most secular culture throughout history, the most pro-West, natural ally for our values and culture in the entire Middle East, by far. 90 million people brutally oppressed for 50 years by a fundamentalist religious cult of literal psychopaths. They are now making the hardest push ever to free themselves and to live free once more under secular westernized values. But they're anti-Islam, and they're burning mosques. And because you're a 5-year-old who works on the good guy, bad guy framework, you believe all Muslims must be protected because all Muslims are the same. You know, like what a racist bigot would say. So the left-wing media silences news of the uprisings and accepts the IRGC narrative in return. The left-wing governments suppress the Iranian protesters in the West, while the pro-Palestinian protesters actually attack them.
I'm not going to speak on Iranians because I'm not Iranian, but I am part of the Free Palestine crowd. So I will tell you why I personally don't align with the mainstream Free Iran Woman Life Freedom movement, and that's because it is rooted in Islamophobic, pro-colonial regime change that doesn't actually serve the interests of the Iranian people.
You, a left-winger, apparently, would refuse 90 million people freedom because the uprisings are anti-Islamic? Because Israel supports them? What exactly are your priorities here, and who exactly are you allying us with? We've seen very clearly what happens when the left ally themselves to the wrong crowd. That's exactly how we got the Islamic Republic of Iran. You would silence and repress the most supporting of left-wing values in order to protect and encourage those who most adamantly suppress left-wing values. You suppress actual, legitimate feminists who are fighting the hardest of anyone on earth for women's rights. And you do that in order to promote and enable your allies who are the most oppressive culture to women's rights of anyone on earth. That is the reality of who you are. You are not the good guy. You are not the hero you so adamantly promote yourself and proclaim yourself to be. And your credibility is dust. Currently, these people occupy the governments of the UK, much of Europe, Canada, and Australia. Here in Australia, we have the Labor Party, and they used to actually be the good ones. The Labor Party are the equivalent of the US Democrats. The Liberal Party, and don't let the name fool you, are the Republican equivalent. You've then got the Greens, who are further left, obviously more focused on the environment. You've also got the One Nation Party, and the closest parallel I could see to that now would be probably America First. There's also a whole bunch of independents, and they're all across the entire scale. Some are larger and more impactful than others. It's a lot of single issue parties and cults of personality stretching across the board. This is how I have voted throughout my life. I began all Labour, so I would tend to vote Labour, Greens, Independents, then the Liberals, and One Nation last. I think it was around 2007 when both major parties began to having these string of leadership disputes. That's where Labour lost me at that point, because they kept backstabbing the leader I was voting for, and for a time it just became this fad where the two major parties simply lost all credibility. So from then I would give what I call spanner votes. Depending on where I lived and who was available at the time, I would usually vote Greens or Independents first, and then I would put Labour, Liberals, and One Nation last in that order. The Labour Party have progressively moved more and more along that horseshoe in regards to certain issues, particularly immigration. And recently they have found a golden goose that will allow them to enforce full control, because that is the ultimate goal at the end of the day. They have jumped on that to push through an all but completely unrelated, if counterproductive and borderline tyrannical legal motion to the likes of which the West has never seen. This bill specifically protects and further enables the actual threat that caused all this shit in the first place, while providing them far more ability to suppress all opposition based not on guilt or even intent, but on the feelings of whoever decides they themselves are a victim at the time. So not only would it make the situation worse, but monumentally worse, and it would shut down any and all ability to counter it. And they do this simply because the associated surrounding culture votes Labour. So everything Labour do, every move they make, is solely honed towards maintaining their position and influence, regardless of cost to any future, culture, security, or integrity of the country itself. I, for one, am done with this shit. You are not the left, and you do not speak for me. From now on, until I see a result, I will be voting One Nation, Independents, Greens, Liberals, and Labour dead fucking last. Not only do I now want the Labour Party out of power, I want them completely fucking decimated. Because they have just confirmed themselves as the number one liability to our security and lifestyle. Even if this bill fails, we all now know their intentions. Do not tell me they won't try it again. I want every single one of their current MPs out on their asses, allowing for a new line of Gen Z candidates to fill those positions. Then I will reassess and see if they're worthy of my vote. No, I do not want One Nation to stay in power. I have no problem with immigration for the most part. Race also, as I've said in previous videos, is not a priority to me. I understand that it is and why it is for many of you, but it is not for me. I do not believe One Nation would be up to the task of running the country on a general basis. I do not have the confidence in their ability across issues such as infrastructure and health and education, trade, and so on. One Nation are a one-trick pony. But I am now more than willing to give them a full moment on the full stage to perform that one trick with no restrictions. It's gotten too serious. What Labour has done is inexcusable and unforgivable. I don't give a shit what side they're on. At the very least, a massive surge towards One Nation in the next election will scare the living shit out of both major parties, ensuring they never try to pull that bullshit ever again. That's worth it to me. And it's worth it to me because I am left-wing. My values have not changed. I am not the party, and the party is not me. I am for the freedom, liberation and security of all oppressed peoples. That is behind my strategy. I am for free and open education. That too is behind my strategy. Because education goes hand in hand with the diversity of opinion and freedom of discussion. Values placed now critically under threat by Labour and the restrictions they impose. I am for the equality of our Indigenous and immigrant populations. That is behind my strategy, because the way Labour segregates and uses them as tools for their own gain is bigoted and despicable. I am for women's and LGBT rights. That is behind my strategy, because Labour and those who they are protecting and enabling are now by far the biggest threat to those values, as we have seen elsewhere in the world. I believe in maintaining strength, clarity, foresight, and will in the face of true threat, and Labour have just revealed themselves to be spineless, short-sighted, self-serving, and really fucking stupid. And no, Liberal Party, you are not the alternative. You're most of the reason we're in this shit to begin with. You would reverse nothing and would only claim those powers for your own self-serving gain. You cannot be trusted either. Voting Greens as well, I think, will only aggravate the issue. They were looking to adjust the bill but not block it, as far as I'm aware. So to me, that simply just leans more weight to that side regardless. The point of this is to rebalance to our naturally evolved setting. The closer one nation gets, the more likely the powers afforded by such extreme bills are handed over to them. I want the left wing fucking terrified of that, as they should have been before running a single word of this bill. Let's show them the very real cost of that complacency. We cannot trust one nation, but we can trust one nation to be one nation, and we can use them temporarily for what they are, our tools, entirely responsive to our will. This move is to remind all of them who they work for. Gen Z left wing, you're all grown up now, so I guess you're on deck. Forget the boomers and their bullshit. They have lost all perspective and accountability. They have stepped too far and their time is done. Put your emotions and fantasies into the back seat and start thinking. Neither left nor right are the correct way. The balance is how we evolved and the most optimal position for our species. Make effort to listen to all sides of an argument. Take no one's assurances as gospel, forge your own theories, and assume yourself to be wrong until you prove yourself right. You're the answer to this? Time to get to work. In the process, if we can work out some sort of trade deal with Iran to swap about 65% of white women for about the same amount of Persian women, that'd be fucking awesome. They clearly hate the West and want to live over there, and many of them clearly love the West and want to live over here, so let's go. Check out my evil demon video to further corrupt yourself with more of my hideous views and maybe counter the algorithmic throttling a bit. If you want to support me, buy my book, Blessia. Sci-fi, coolness, alternate concepts on what else we may one day be. I also freelance video editing and design. If you ever need any of that shit, get in touch. I've started posting on X again, but I don't know if that's even going to be available to me. It could be banned here soon because, again, fuck Labour. So there's that. I will never, ever ask you to like the video, to subscribe to my channel, or to leave a comment to help counter certain algorithmic motions that are clearly in play. I don't play that way, and you will never once hear me mention any one of those three very simple things. I'll end it there.